thank you. No, it's good. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Mrs. Niazov, we're good? Yeah? This way? Good? Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you. First of all, welcome, everybody. Welcome to our new location. I want to thank very much the Shul, Kahal Avas Yitzchak, the Rabbi Betzalo Rudinsky Shlita, and the board, and the president, and the Gabayim, and everybody involved for giving us this privilege and opportunity to be able to do the classes here beginning this week. I want to thank our security, Ari Suskind. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you're comfortable. Everybody's comfortable? Okay. If I could just ask you to please put your cell phones on vibrate, we would appreciate it very, very much. And I shall do the same. Okay. Today's shir is dedicated in the honor and loving memory of Reb Nachum, in the loving memory of Reb Nachum Elazar ben Reb Yosef, in honor of the second yahrzeit on the 12th day of Adar, Tehei Nishmasei Tzrura B'Tzrur HaChayim. We're going to explore a central theme that is connected to the holiday of Purim, which is just in 1 week. Obviously, next week there won't be a class because it is Purim, and we will resume Be'ezer Hashem the following week, which means in 2 weeks on Tuesday. There is a very fascinating Mishnah in Tractate Megillah, which is the Mishnah dedicated to Purim. It's called Megillah. And the Mishnah asks a question, it's on page 19, Mehechan Kairias HaMegillah v'yotzei b'yedei chevasei. The Megillah, the book of Esther, has 10 chapters. From where does one start reading in order to fulfill the obligation of reading the Megillah on Purim? We know one of the 4 special mitzvahs on Purim, both for men and women, is to read or hear the Megillah. But the Megillah is a long book, it's a long scroll. From where does one begin? Naturally, as you can imagine, there is a debate about it. Different opinions, different perspectives. Rabbi Yehuda says, you begin from Ish Yehudi Haya B'Shushan Habira. In other words, when the Megillah starts describing the story of Mordechai, there was a man in Shushan Habira, his name was Mordechai, that's where you begin from. Rabbi Yossi says, no, you begin from Achar Hadvarim Ha'ela, Gidal Achashverosh es Haman. You begin from the story of Haman, when the Persian emperor appoints and nominates Haman as his prime minister. That's where you begin the story. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says, you begin from Balayla Hahu Nadad Ashnas HaMelech, which is only chapters, you wait till chapter 6, you can skip. You start from chapter 6. That night, the king was suffering from insomnia. That's where the story begins. He couldn't sleep. And each one has the rationale for their perspective. Whether it's Rabbi Yehuda, you begin with Mordechai, Ish Yehudi. Whether it's Rabbi Yossi, you begin with Haman, Achar Hadvarim Ha'ela. Whether it's Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he says you begin with the miracle, when Achashverosh can't sleep. Then comes the opinion of Reb Meir. Reb Meir says, Koirei es kula. One must read the entire Megillah from chapter 1 through chapter 10. And as the Gemara says, Reb Chelbo said, Halacha Koirei es kula. The law is, like Reb Meir, that you read the entire Megillah, and that's the only way you could fulfill the obligation of the Megillah. And the question, of course, is, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's view is understandable. He says, let's get to the miracle. We don't have to get into the sobbing and the grief and the preparations. Purim is a time to feast and celebrate. Let's get straight to the miracle. You want to read about the tsaras and the problems? Fine, do it on your own time. But Purim, you have to read about the miracle. We can understand that. We understand the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who says, start reading from the story of Haman, because that's really the story, the decree, and the miracle. Haman was appointed as a prime minister. He hated the Jewish people. He hated Mordechai because he didn't bow down to him. And that meant that he wanted to rid the world not only of Mordechai but of the Jewish people, as we discussed at length in last week's year with the 3 psukim, Al-Tira, Utzu, Eitza, Va'ad Zikna. And he convinces the king to issue forth an edict to exterminate the Jewish people, almost successful. I could understand that's where you start reading from, because that's the drama, the plot to exterminate, and then the story of salvation. I can even understand the view of Rabbi Yehuda that you start with Mordechai. Obviously, he is one of the central characters in the entire story. He is the one who directs Esther throughout. He is the one who sends her to go to speak to the king, to her husband. He is the person who will ultimately be rewarded by the king and appointed prime minister. So I can understand you start the story with Mordechai. The strange thing, however, is that the halacha is like none of these sages, even though these are some of the greatest sages in Jewish history. The halacha is like Reb Meir. And Reb Meir holds you have to read the Megillah from the beginning. And what's the beginning? The opening chapters are really not connected, not to the miracle of Purim, not even to the decree that led to the miracle of Purim, not even to the story of Mordechai. The opening chapter is about the ruler of the Persian Empire, whose name was Achashverosh, a man who succeeded Cyrus, who succeeded Dariush, who was the first Persian Empire following the Babylonian emperor, Belshazzar, who was Vashti's father. And the party that he throws in the 3rd year of his kingship, the details of the party, and it's a party that lasts for 187 days, and we know how the wine he served, and the types of cups he used, and types of beds, the types of tapestries, and the types of drapings, and the mosaics, and the lighting, and the types of stones, and gems, and materials, and fabrics, anything you want to know about exterior and interior design. If you study well chapter 1 of the Megillah together with the Gemara, you will learn a lot about exterior and interior design. It's really, it leads to the story, because after 187 days, he got drunk and he summoned his wife and she didn't want to come, and he had her executed, and he got into a depression and he started to look for a new queen. But really, if you want to do that, you can go back even further. You could tell me how Achashverosh was born and how he was raised and how he became the king and how Vashti became the queen. But at some point, you got to stop the story. We can go back all the way to Adam and Eve. That's also part of the story. Everything is part of every story, there's no question. But at some point, you got to limit the story. So the other views are understandable. They're saying, on Purim, read the Purim story. You could read a lot of other stories. You can also discuss how Persia even became the superpower of civilization at the time. That's certainly very interesting. How Achashverosh came to the throne. Obviously, his wife, when he was drunk, told him, so the Gemara famously says that she told him that basically, you belong in a stable. When Achashverosh wanted her to appear without her garments, she said, let's remember who you are and who I am. I am the daughter of Belshazzar, the Babylonian monarch. You used to be the kid who ran the stable of my father. In other words, you were destined to deal with horses. That's what she sent a message to him. Not only that, she sent him a message. My father had such an ability to hold his alcohol, he could drink the equivalent of 1,000 people and still retain his sobriety. And you, my husband, you drink wine and you become a shaita. You behave like an idiot. Sounds familiar? That's what she sent back to him. Now, how did this stable boy become a king? It's certainly a fascinating story how he did it. Did he do it because of his charisma, his charm, his brilliance, his prowess? Was it money? The Gemara itself debates it. If it was money, if it was his virtue, his skill as a king, as a monarch, maybe not virtue, but talent, his talents. But at some point you have to stop the story. At some point you have to get to the point of Purim. So I understand the other views. Talk about insomnia, because that's the beginning of the miracle. He can't sleep, and he's searching to reward a man who helped him, and he rewards Mordechai, and that's the beginning of the end of Haman. I understand the opinion to tell me the story of Haman and the decree. I understand the opinion to start with Mordechai, but that's not the halacha. The halacha is that you start all the way from the beginning. It's important to know that Achashverosh was a king. It's important to know that it took him a couple of years to settle down. It's important to know that he threw a party for 180 days straight. And then, if that wasn't enough, another 7 days. And it's important to know the types of fabrics and drinks and service that he offered at that party. It's important to know even the fact that everyone could choose their own menu. Kiritzoin, ish ve'ish. And the Gemara says, who's ish ve'ish? Mordechai and Haman. Rashi says Mordechai and Haman were the two cup bearers at this party. In other words, if you were ultra orthodox and you wanted wine with the hechsher of the Bezdin Tzedek of Eda HaCharedis or Rabbi Landau, you had that section of the party. If you liked Haman's menu more, you had that section too. There were signs. Persian lamb under Mordechai's hechsher. Lobster, shrimp, and bacon under Haman's hechsher. You had French wines, Italian wines, Mahadirin, the best of the best. You had Glat Kosher and you had Glat Treif. I have to know this. How is it relevant to the story of Purim? You have to read, and if not, you did not fulfill the mitzvah. It's true, at the end of the party, after 187 days, when he's drunk, he got into a fight with his wife. And in the good tradition of the ancient Persian monarchs, he executes her. He goes into a depression, and now he needs a new queen. Is it a fascinating story? Yes. How is that directly relevant to the Purim story, to the point that you have to read it becomes the question, because all the sages disagree besides Reb Meir. Usually the halacha doesn't follow Reb Meir, but in this case the halacha follows Reb Meir, and we have to read the entire Megillah from the beginning till the end, and if not, I did not fulfill the mitzvah of reading the Megillah. There's another fascinating thing, and that is the Medrash says, the Gemara says in Yerushalmi Tractate Megillah, and the Rambam says it as a halacha in the laws of Megillah, that when Mashiach comes, all the books of the prophets and the writings will be nullified. Kol Sifrei HaNeviim v'chol HaKsuvim hasidim libatel l'maisa Mashiach. They will all be nullified. Besides Megillas Esther. Megillas Esther, it says, won't be nullified, just like Chamisha Chumshe Torah and like the halachas of Torah Shabbal Peh, she'einan b'teilin la'olam. They'll never be nullified. Now the commentators struggle with this. Why would we nullify all the books of the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim? Yeshua, Shoftim, Shmuel, Malachim, these are holy writings. And the way the Rashba explains it is, not that they'll be nullified, but it'll be like lighting a candle in the middle of the day. When you light a candle in the middle of the day, the sunlight is so powerful and intense that it doesn't create, there's no significance to the candle. The candle gets nullified in the sense that it loses its identity, because Shraga Batia Ramayahani, what's the value of a candle in the presence of midday? Go outside now and light a candle. I mean, a candle is valuable, but it doesn't add anything. When you're in a dark room at night and you light a candle, wow, it casts light in the room. The idea of Shabbos candles before electricity, it was a very powerful idea that during the Friday night meal, people shouldn't sit in the dark, they should have light. So the Rashba says that when Mashiach comes, it says, everybody is going to experience prophecy. So therefore, the books of the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim, they will be bottled, meaning it will be like lighting a candle in the middle of the day. They won't have special significance, because the great revelation of the time will cause that all of these Nevi'im and Ksuvim of the past, even though they'll be there and they're still holy, but they'll be bottled just like the candle is bottled in the middle of the day, meaning it's subsumed and it forfeits its significance in the great energy of sunlight. And yet, Megillas Esther is an exception. The book of Esther that we read on Purim is an exception. That even when Mashiach comes, somehow it's going to have enormous significance. But why? Why is that? I'm going to change the subject now completely, but God willing, we will get back to it soon. There is a fascinating Mishnah in a different tractate. It's a tractate called Kalim, and it deals with ritual purity and impurity. Now, these are laws that for the most part are not so relevant today, because in the olden days, laws of purity and impurity were essential to Jewish life. Just like you prepare for Shabbos or you prepare for Pesach, just like you clean your house or you make sure there's dinner, just like you do the laundry and you want to make sure the house is tidy, the laws of purity and impurity were a part of daily Jewish life. When something was impure, they had to know about it. And the reason is people would go to the Beis HaMikdash, people would eat holy foods, sacred foods. Kohanim would serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So Jewish life revolved around ritual purity and impurity. Today it still exists. You have the concept of nida and mikveh and so forth, but you can't compare it to the way it existed in ancient times. So the Mishnah teaches us in Tractate Kalim a very fascinating Mishnah. And that is that there are 7 days to the week. He says, on Sunday, God created, it says, heaven and earth. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. On Monday, God created what's called the firmament, rakia, the firmament dividing the higher waters and the lower waters. Tuesday, vegetation and produce, fruits, vegetables, all types of trees, everything that grows. Okay. Wednesday, the planets, the sun and the moon. Yeah. Thursday were mammals, animals, all types of living creatures, living organisms on earth, including, birds. And then you had Friday, fish, and the human being was created. Friday. Shabbos is a day of rest. So the Mishnah says that the days alternated. On Sunday, God created things that could become impure. On Monday, not. Tuesday, yeah. Wednesday, not. Thursday, not. Friday, yes. Shabbos, not. Sunday, earth was created. Earth, if you make pottery, I don't know if you ever did earthenware pottery, maybe in the Far East. You ever bought earthenware pottery made out of clay, it's made out of earth, mud. It becomes tamei, it could become impure. Let's say a dead weasel falls into the earthenware bowl. It is tamei, it has to go to the mikveh. It has to go into the mikveh. Let's say somebody dies in a house, any vessel that's there, if it's earthenware and it's open, it becomes tamei. That's Sunday. Monday, there was nothing to become impure. The heaven can't become impure. Okay? Tuesday, all vegetation and produce was created. Food could become impure. Fruits, vegetables, and also trees, because wooden vessels can become impure. Let's say I have a wooden cup, it could become impure. Wednesday, the planets were created. They can't become impure. Sun, the moon, the stars, how are you going to make them impure? Even if you get there, you won't make them impure. Friday, a human being was created. A human being could become impure. Thursday, living mammals and birds were created, and they don't become impure. Living animals can't become impure. Living birds can't become impure. A person could become impure, whether it's during the cycle, whether it's a leper, male or female, whether it's a zav, certain type of emission, male or female, whether if I touch a source of impurity, a man produces, when a man releases procreative substances, it's called balkeri, he becomes tamei. A person could become tamei, and then Shabbos there's no tumah. So Sunday, yes. Monday, no. Tuesday, yes. Wednesday, no. Thursday, no. Friday, yes. Shabbos, no. That's what the Mishnah says. The question, of course, is why is that relevant? Why is the Mishnah? I mean, it's a cute thing to say, but like, What's the point of this? Okay. I'm going to change the subject again. Yom HaKippurim, it says in Zohar, is called Yom HaKippurim because it's Kippurim. Yom HaKippurim, Yom Kippur is like Purim. Yom HaKippurim is like Purim. Their 2 days are very similar. It's obviously a very strange comment because in the Jewish calendar, the two most opposite days of the calendar are Yom Kippur and Purim. Yom Kippur is somber, introspective. Nobody eats, nobody drinks, nobody's in the streets. You know where your teenagers are all day, hopefully. Purim is the exact opposite day. It's festive. Some people are lightheaded. Some people are drinking. Some people are very excited or happy or make themselves excited, but it's a very different energy than Yom Kippur. And yet, Yom HaKippurim means it's Kippurim, it's like Purim, and yet, in its outer veneer, it's so different. It's so different than Purim. Another fascinating thing about Purim and about the Megillah is, you may know this and it's fascinating, is it's the only book in the entire Tanakh that doesn't have Hashem's name mentioned even once. And it's very strange because it's a story about divine providence. It's a story about divine salvation. Esther tells Mordechai, go gather all the Jews and fast for 3 days and 3 nights. You would expect her to say, and daven to Hashem, reach out to Hashem. Not a word. Mordechai, it says, he puts on a sack, he puts on ashes on his head, and he cries out bitterly. And you expect him to say, he cries out to God, he davens, not a word. The pasuk says, wherever the Jews heard the news about the edict, there is tremendous grief, there is tremendous mourning, there is tzoim, there is fasting, there is crying, there is sackcloth, there are ashes. You would expect a word like prayer, repentance, beseeching the Almighty. Not a word. The miracle happens. It says, La Yehudim Haisa Oira, Simcha, Sasam, Vikar. There's light, there's joy, there's festivity, there's glory. Wherever Jews are, they're celebrating, they're happy, they're making feasts, Mishta, Simcha, Yomtov, Shalach Manas. They're giving gifts to the poor. And you would expect one more word, and that is, and they're thanking God. Not a word. You don't have this in the Tanakh. Every book has God's mention. I mean, this is Tanakh, it's scripture. It's the Bible. It's the book of God. It speaks about God. Even Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which essentially is a love story, has Hashem's name mentioned once at the end. Rishafei Rishvei Eish Shalheves Yudke, once. Also, most of it not. The Megillah does not have Hashem's name mentioned even once. And it's strange, like you couldn't, hast du nicht vergunnen? Like they didn't forgive God even once in the beginning, in the middle, at the end. Just once, say thank you, Baruch Hashem. Things are working out. It wasn't written by secular people. This was written by the Sanhedrin, by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, by Mordechai and Esther. Mordechai was the leader of the Sanhedrin. He was considered the spiritual leader of the Jewish people. They made mitzvahs that revolve around Judaism, reading the Megillah, the Suda of Purim. And yet, Hashem's name is not mentioned. It's hinted. It says in Medrash, Achashverosh is Acharis V'Reishis Shaloi. Achashverosh means, it's 3 words, Acharis, Reishis Shaloi. The end and the beginning is his. The Zohar says, when it says Hamelach in the Megillah, it's a hint for God. The Arizal shows that many words begin or end acronyms with Yudke Vavke. Esther says, Yavai Hamelach v'Haman hayoim el hamishta. Let the king and Haman come to the feast. So Yavai starts with a Yud, Hamelach starts with a Hey, v'Haman starts with a Vav, and Hayoim is a Hey. So you have Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Yavai Hamelach v'Haman hayoim. But that's strange. Let the king and Haman come to the party. And by the way, she's talking about Yudke Vavke. Obviously, it's extremely hinted and concealed. Why would this happen? Another fascinating thing about Purim is we don't say Hallel on Purim. Hallel is said on every single holiday. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Chanukah is a rabbinic holiday, but we say Hallel every day. It's part of the mitzvah of Chanukah. We thank God for the salvation, and that's called gratitude. Hallel means gratitude, appreciation, praise. On Purim, there is no Hallel. And the Gemara asks why. In Megillah, the Gemara says 3 reasons. Number 1, because it happened outside of Eretz Yisrael. No, so if it happened outside of Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say thank you, because it didn't happen in Eretz Yisrael. Another reason is because we're still, it says akat, because we're still servants of Achashverosh. They were not emancipated from Achashverosh. They were free, they were rescued, but not liberated from Achashverosh. Okay, but their lives were saved. Their lives were saved, even if they're still under foreign rule. Another reason is, it says, because the Megillah, that is the Hallel. The Megillah is the substitute for Hallel. But we don't say that by other holidays. Pesach, you don't say, you're doing a Seder, you don't have to say Hallel. Chanukah, you're saying Al Hanissim, you don't have to say Hallel. Purim, we say, you read the Megillah. 3 reasons. Chutz La'aretz, it was in Chutz La'aretz, or because we're still slaves of Achashverosh, or because we read the Megillah. Another fascinating thing about Purim is the minhag to get dressed up. We don't have that in other holidays. Some were opposed to the custom, but many of the halachic authorities, including the Ramah, sanctioned it, that on Purim you get dressed up. Also, the grager that we use by Haman, it's interesting, it's very different than the dreidel. Because the dreidel has a point on top, and then you turn the dreidel, you spin the dreidel, the foundation of the dreidel is on bottom, and the point is on top. By a grager, it's the other way around. You hold onto the handle, and the grager revolves on top, and the handle, the base of the grager, faces the bottom. So you say, what's the difference? This is a toy for Chanukah, this is a toy for Purim. But the fact that it became part of a minhag Yisrael Toirahu, it's part of the customs of the Jewish people, there is spiritual significance to it. It's not just a random mistake. Here, the dreidel points to the top, and the grager points to the bottom. But the truth is that all of these, everything I just mentioned from the beginning, all really represent a unified idea, an integrated idea. And everything we asked and discussed all can become explained and illuminated when one understands this key point that Purim and the Megillah really tries to convey. And it has to do with a unique teaching that Judaism is trying to teach through Purim and through the Megillah, that does not come out in any other holiday and in any other book of the Tanakh. Each sefer of Tanakh has its unique genre and message. The Megillah has a unique message and genre, and it's such an important and powerful message that even when Mashiach comes, it retains its full impact and significance and does not get subsumed in the extraordinary infinite radiance and light in the time of the Geula. What is this unique message that the Megillah conveys? Haman came from the nation of Amalek. He's called Haman HaAgagi. He was a descendant of Agag, who was the king of Amalek. The word Amalek, Ayin Mem Lamet Kuf, is the numerical value of 240. Ayin Mem is 70 and 40 is 210, plus another 30 is 240, and another 40. So you have Amalek, Ayin is 70, Mem is 40, that's 210, plus Lamed is 30. So you have, 110. And then you have another 130 Lamed Kuf. Again, Ayin is 70, Mem is 40, so that's 110. Then you have another 30, which is Lamed, so it makes it 140, and you have Kuf is 100, is 240. 240 is the same gematria like the word Ram. What does Ram mean? Ram means above, exalted, higher. There's another word that's very much associated with Purim. The word Purim means a goyrel, a lot. In Persian, pur is a lot, goyrel. What's goyrel? Goyrel gimel is 3, Vav is 6, and then you have Reish, Lamed. Reish is 200, Lamed is 30, and then you have 6 is 236, plus 3 is 239. Goyrel, Im HaKailel is 240. What do we mean, Im HaKailel? When you do Gematria, you could estimate each letter on its own, and then you could add one more because of the whole word together. So Amalek is 240, which is Ram, and Goyrel, which is a lot, throwing a lot, Pur is a Goyrel, is 239, and you have the Kailel, you bring in the whole word, so you have one more, which becomes 240. Because Gematria, you could do every letter independently, but then when you bring it together, what do they say? The whole is always greater than the sum of its parts. So you have the whole word, there's one more, so Goyrel becomes 240. When a person reads the Megillah, one encounters a very fascinating thing about the Megillah. And that is, if you were there, if I was a fly on the wall, and I just watched it happen. In the Megillah, you're reading it in 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, or 40 minutes, depends who's going to read the Megillah in your place. But if I don't read it in one shot, if I watched it, I was a fly on the wall, I was an observer on a bleacher, and I watched the event as it unfolded, what do I see? What I see is, Achashverosh is a king, very successful. He becomes a king. 3 years later, he celebrates the anniversary of his kingship, and he throws a very big party. What's the story? What's the story? The story is a king is throwing a feast. I also know all the decorations. If I was reporting for a newspaper, for the Shushan Gazette, if I was its correspondent, I would describe the feast and the party and the wine and the drinks and the festivities and the menu like people describe parties today. That's the story. The story is getting dramatic. The party continues in 187 days. That's a whole half a year of partying. That's a lot. And the wine, it says, is endless. And the Gemara says that you learn from the Psukim that he made sure that every person got wine that was older than his or her own age. So if I was 90 years old, he gave me wine that was at least 100 years old. If I was 30 years old, he gave me wine that was at least 40 years old. And it's all in the Megillah. I have to know this. This is the story. That's the story. Then the story really takes a very sour turn. The king and the queen get into a fight. Okay, today you would send them to therapy. Then they dealt with things through the sword. Then, next part of the story, the king gets into a depression. Of course, he kills his wife. He gets into a depression. What do you expect? Now he's depressed. He's lonely. He's melancholy. He looks for a new wife. And since he's the Persian king, he has access to every single woman. So now he has a whole committee, and the Megillah does this, as though it's important to know what Persian kings were like, a whole committee of how to select the right woman. And I'm not going to get here very graphic, but you could read the Megillah, because the Megillah is much more graphic than I'm going to get. And there's a process of perfumes and massages and yoga and Pilates. You don't just come to the king. You go through 6 months of Pilates and exercise and gyms and all types of perfumes and saunas and schwitzes and aromatherapy and alles gut. Why? And to prepare for your audience with the king. 6 months they prepare you. It's all for free. Maybe the king is going to like what he sees. Right? And we even know the guy who's in charge. His name is Haggai. He's the man in charge. He's the CEO of a huge operation. A whole selection. And every woman is taken. She has her evening, night with the king until Esther comes. Esther is not interested, but she has no choice. She's taken. And he says he loves Esther more than everybody else. What's the story here? From a party 187 days with a fight with his wife is now a whole story about this great, first I know he's a drunkard, and now we know he's a womanizer. 2 great qualities of the Persian monarch. Okay, he takes Esther. And what's the next story? He marries her, he throws a party, and there's a tax discount. Okay, that's a new story. Tax discounts are a big story in every country. Then there's a whole other story. A story that happens years later. Between the party and Esther, you're dealing with years later, because Achashverosh was a king. 3 years later, there was a party. Only in the 7th year did he get Esther. So years went by. What happened during all those years? I don't know. He was running an empire, 127 provinces. Years pass, and I'm the reporter. Every day is another story. Year 12 of his reign, Haman suddenly emerges on the scene. He makes a decree against the Jewish people. As I'm reporting the story, each story is completely disjointed. So Haman now makes a decree. This is the 12th year of Achashverosh's reign. What's the connection to the party? Who remembers? It happened a decade ago. What's the connection to Esther? What's the connection to Vashti? What's the connection in the middle? There was an assassination attempt, another story that I missed. Completely disjointed stories. But then comes the moment when Esther intervenes. She convinces her husband to come to a party and then another party. And at the second party, she tells him that Haman tried to execute her and her whole nation. Achashverosh is angry. He kills Haman. And he lets Esther change a decree and send a second decree that the Jews can self-defend themselves. And suddenly you look and you say, so I was reporting a story for 12 years and the miracle happened in the 13th year. There was really one story. There was one story. I never saw it as one story. I saw it as 1,000 different isolated details, and if you would read the newspapers, you'll see they're isolated stories. But suddenly I realized it's really one story. The story of the party, 187 days, culminated in the story of Vashti, which culminated years later in Esther, which continued years later with Bixen Viserys, which continued with Haman, which continued with the decree, which brought about the salvation of the Jewish people. It's one long story, even though it went off on hundreds or thousands of tangents, but it's really one story. And the story is one point. La Yehudim ha'isa oira v'simcha v'sasim v'ikar. Comes a person and says, why am I reading in the Megillah about Achashverosh's party? Get to the point. But if you get to the point, you're missing the point. The point is that which is not part of the point is also part of the point. So if you get straight to the point, you're missing the main point. The main point Reb Meir tells you of the Megillah is that which seemingly is irrelevant to the point from your external perspective is really the only way you can get to the ultimate point. You'll say, but it doesn't make sense. You're going to tell me that 12 years, there's news happening 24 hours a day nonstop, and nobody knows what's happening. And then one day something happens, and now it gives context to everything. How do you make sense of this? But this is what the Megillah is telling you. The Megillah is telling you that 187 days, the empire is going crazy from this nut jobs parties. It has nothing to do with anything we would think it has to do with. Suddenly, more than a decade later, there is really one holistic story here. And you cannot reach the La Yehudim Ha'isa Oira if you do not first go through that entire evolution of events, because without it, you would have never reached this point. But you say, but there's so many things going on. Yes, there's so many things going on, but really there's one truth that's going on. And if you don't lose focus, you will see it. If you lose focus, you can get carried away with everything else. The Gemara says, Hai alma kibehi luladamya. The world is like a wedding. What's the connection between the world and a wedding? You can say the world is like a banana peel. I think the world is like a banana. Or the world is like a tomato. What's a wedding? So the Baal Shem Tov once said, at a wedding is a very interesting type of event. How long do people prepare for weddings? I asked the right crowd, but don't answer all at once. Takes sometimes a while to prepare for weddings. I know some of you could make weddings in 2 weeks. People prepare for weddings a long time, yeah? Just the sheitel can take 6 months. And choosing the gown, and choosing the right gown, and then the caterer, and the color of the napkins, yeah? And if the knife is on the right side or on the left side, and what are you going to serve at the smorgasbord? And negotiations of how many platters of sushi you can get for $95,000 a person. It takes a lot of time. Preparation, there's a hall, there's a caterer, and sometimes there's a bar, and there's a musician, and there's who's getting the brachas. Oh my God. Siddur Kiddushin. And you gave your brother-in-law the wrong brachas, he's not speaking to your husband for 5 months. And who's making Sheva brachas? And what happens the first night? And where do they stay? And when is the music? And when is the dancing? And when is the chuppah? And where's the chuppah? And where's the hall? And we do it here, we do it there. So lebedik and freilich. And then comes the wedding itself, and there's a lot going on at a wedding. You could focus on the flowers, and you could focus on the food, and you could focus on the gowns, and you could focus on the music, and you could focus at the decorations, and you could focus at the drapings, and you could focus on the speakers, and you could focus on everything. But what's really the wedding? The wedding is one moment. Harei at mikudeshes li. One moment takes around 2.5 seconds, and people usually don't see it. Even the photographer often loses it. So the Baal Shem Tov said the whole world is like a wedding. In a wedding, you could prepare for months, and you could be occupied with thousands of things, and you miss the point. Because there's a lot of action, and there's good action going on. There's good action. It's not bad. It's great action. The smorgasbord is a great place to hang out by. To go to the Kabbalah's Panim with the men is usually not the place to hang out. You go to the smorgasbord, that's where the good food is. The men, they give marble cake. You go to the women's section of Kabbalah's Panim, that's it. It's a great place to hang out. And sometimes you have an orchestra, and some people have a symphony of 14 musicians or 25 musicians with a great singer. It's a great place to hang out. And even the chuppah, there's a lot of action. Everybody needs their covered, and everybody gets their space. He says, but you weren't at the wedding. Sometimes people leave a wedding. Reb Nachman of Breslov once said, people leave a wedding, and a person turns to his friend, a person turns to his wife and says, wow, that music was amazing. And she says, did you see what the kala looked like? And he says, did you taste the Viennese table? And she says, it was such a good atmosphere. And he discusses the food, and she discusses that. He says, nobody was at the wedding. And then sometimes people go out of the wedding, the wife turns to the husband and says, isn't it amazing that these two people came together? Oh, they were at the wedding. They were at the wedding. And that happens one moment. Harei mikudeshes li, the moment of the relationship. So he says, Hai alma kebehi luladamya. The world is like a wedding. A lot is going on in the world. Take out your phone or your schedule or your notebook and look at what you have to do. How many appointments, how many telephone calls. This one has to get her daughter into seminary, and you have to be able to basically make thousands of calls, negotiate diplomacy, and use every skill in the world to deal with people. And this one is trying to find a shidduch, and this one has a sheva brachas to make, and this one has a headache, and there's a financial crisis, and this one has with children, and good things, and challenging things, and great things, and difficult things, yourself and your loved ones. Non-stop, the world is a wedding, and it looks like a wedding. Megetum, a kumtum, a loiftum, a hakt, and everybody's schlepping you. The caterer wants to be paid, and the musician wants to be paid, and the chazan wants to be paid, and the singer wants to be paid, and the hall wants to be paid, and the lighting. Every mishlept. And it's so easy to get consumed and caught up. Achashverosh is throwing a party 187 days. Says the Baal Shem Tov, Hayal Mikebehi Lula. You could lose the whole Nakuda. You could lose the whole point of everything. And the point is sometimes happens in 2 seconds. It happens in 3 seconds. And what's the point of it all? 4 words. Harei at mekudeshes li. And that's Pshat in Pirkei Avos. Hillel says, Im ein ani li, mi li. If I won't be here for me, who will be here for me? So the Baal Shem Tov says, Im ein ani li. If I won't be here for the li, mi li. Which li? Harei at mekudeshes li. What's harei at mekudeshes li? It's the moment the groom tells the bride, and together they decide that they are betrothed to each other. V'hiskin loy mimenu, as we say in Sheva Brachas, binyan adei at. What's the core? The core is the core of the wedding. Smorgasbord is important, flowers are important, the wine is important, the music is very important, and the food, without it, forget it. And the sushi, of course, without that is a question if they're married. All good, all good. But what's the nekuda? The core is the relationship, the connection, the intimacy between you and your Creator. Harei at mekudeshes li im einani li mili. I have to fix my car, and I have to go to the dentist, and I have to deal with insurance, and I have an appointment with the doctor, and I have an appointment about a house, and I have an appointment about this. All good. But what's the nekuda? The nekuda is hareyat mekudashes li. The nekuda is you're in a relationship, you're an ambassador of God in this world, an ambassador of love, of light, of hope, of healing, of redemption. The nekuda is that you're always in a state of kiddushin, of marriage, of a relationship with Hashem, which means a relationship with truth, a relationship with your essence, a relationship with your own soul, which is a chelik elokam imal. You're always in a relationship. If I lose sight of that, I wasn't at the wedding. I got caught up with a lot of things, but I lost the point. And that's where stress and anxiety comes from. Stress and anxiety comes from that I'm getting caught up by side things of the wedding and I'm not present at the wedding. I sometimes find it very sad that the Bali Simcha, the people who make a wedding, they are the ones who at the wedding are the least present. And I know why. I'm not blaming them. They're so anxious. I don't have to pay the bills. I come to the wedding and I eat. And when I get bored, I take out my phone and I go outside. And if I want, I dance 3 times. But they are left with the tab of $80,000 at the end of the night, or $29,000 if you're doing it on a cheap day, So they're stressed and they're anxious, and I understand it, and it's very normal. But you could never lose sight of what's happening. So if you're not happy with the shidduch, it's not a good reason to be upset at the wedding. But if you're happy with them, then the question is why we're going to the wedding. But remember, if your girl got a boy and your son got a girl, that's the moment. Don't lose sight of that moment. There's other things to take care of. But sometimes people get more consumed with what this Yente and Yachna is going to say about the wedding than about the relationship itself, and they ruin their life. And sometimes people do this their whole life. They're busy pleasing other people and being yotzeh for other people and making sure to be people's pleasers so that everyone is happy, and you're not in the moment of life. What is the moment of life? It's one moment. Hareyat mekudeshes li. Your relationship with God. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else happening. Everything else is an accessory. It's your avodas Hashem, my opportunity right now to bring in Hashem's light into the world. If what I'm doing is contributing to that, then I'm at the wedding. And if not, I'm just in a distraction. So this is easy to say when you could see the point, when you could see the core. The Chiddush of Purim is a deeper Chiddush. And that is, you come to a Jew and you tell the Jew, there's a whole world going on. You know how big this world is? 7 billion people. 7 billion people. 14 million are Jews. That's not even 1/4%. Not even 1/4%. And then you tell a Jew, and you should take seriously your avodas Hashem, your service to God. What is this, a mockery? I have to stand up to a world and really cherish and say that me living as a Jew is significant? I mean, come on. What am I, an avtzalachasnik? Why not just assimilate? So you say, no, you're not an avtzalachasnik. You're not trying to go against anybody. But the purpose of all of creation and of all of life, of all of creation is that a Jew should wake up in the morning and say, Moida ani lefanecha, and learn Torah and do a mitzvah and connect to God, and give and love another person. Come on, which world are you living in? What is this? Like, wake up and march to the beat. Imagine a person builds a factory, and the factory has billions of machines, and the machines are extremely sophisticated, and you're going to tell me that the purpose of it all is some small little profit that's produced by a small machine, and that's why the whole company is going. Come on, how stubborn can you be? And throughout history, this is what the Jewish people were told, Shuvi, Shuvi, Hashulamis. Why are you tenaciously stubborn, holding on to an identity of a small, tiny minority, as Haman told Achashverosh, one nation scattered everywhere, but the laws of the king they don't do. Enough. It's ethnic primitiveness. That's a big question. What's the answer to this question? The answer to this question is the Megillas Esther. What does Megillas Esther tell you? A whole world is turning over for years. And what's the tachlis? The tachlis is, the purpose is one moment. La Yehudim Haisa'ira. If somebody is reporting the story of the party, they didn't get the story. They got distracted by the story. The story is a story of one moment that's going to maybe emerge years later. Same is true as in your own life. You look at your own life, how many things are going on in your life? There's hours I have to dedicate to eat. There's hours I have to dedicate to drink. There's hours I have to dedicate to health. There's hours you have to dedicate to sleep. There's hours you have to dedicate to run all of the technical responsibilities of your life. So a Jew says, if the real tachlis of everything was my relationship with Hashem, my avodas Hashem, so create me that way. Create me in a spiritual space. Yeah. Me and God, and we could connect to each other, and I could reveal His light in the world, and Shalom Yisrael. That's not what happens. What happens is a ganze Welt. In everybody's world, there's a whole world going on with endless distractions, emotional, physical, financial, psychological, things that bother you. As I'm talking to you, yeah, you probably got a couple of texts that you'll see later. It's all part of Achashverosh's party. Schlepping here, schlepping there, schlepping there. Comes the Megillah and reveals one of the most important lessons in life. And one of the most important lessons in life is that the entire world and the entire cosmos and endless things that are going on ultimately have one purpose and one story. And that purpose and story may seem, in terms of time or quantity, irrelevant, minuscule. And yet, that's the truth of the world. And in modern science, we know the power of one atom. One atom. In a drop of water, you know how many atoms you have in one drop of water? Not a cup of water, a drop of water. You know how many atoms you have? One followed by 21 zeros. Anybody knows the number? How much is 1 followed by 21 zeros? Anybody? Huh? It's not a trillion, no. 21 zeros. I didn't say 7 or 8 zeros. 21 zeros. It's probably called sectillion, somewhere there. You can Google it. You forgot your math classes? Sectillion, somewhere there. One drop of water has, one drop, not a cup, not a bottle. A drop of water has, you know how many atoms? 1 followed by 21 zeros. That's a lot, and that's one drop of water. One drop of water. We're not even talking about people and living organisms and even a pinky or a needle. I'm talking about one drop of water. Now go through the whole planet, go through the whole cosmos. You see what I mean? There's a lot going on. And yet we know today, splitting the atom, one atom, you split an atom, and what can happen? You can destroy a world. We call this age the atomic age, the nuclear age, nuclear energy. You split an atom. It's not, you know what an atom is? You know how small it is? I can't describe it because we don't have the language for the smallness of it. We can't see even an atom. Split an atom. What a quantity. And yet, when you get to the core and you split it, you unleash power that can change the whole world in destructiveness or in positivity. How much you can light up the world. So it's not about quantity. It's getting to the core of the atom. It's so small, that's irrelevant. So that's in one drop of water. Now compare all the atoms in the entire planet. I can't even say 1 followed by zeros because I won't stop telling you the zeros. As long as I live, I won't be able to finish. Comes Megillas Esther and says that you should know Ani nivreisi l'shamash eskoini. That the whole purpose, the whole story of everything is really one core, one story. And everything leads to that story. And what's that story? That story is your relationship with infinity and your role to bring infinity into this world, to bring truth into this world. As the Medrash says, Nisava Kadosh Baruch Hu liyis leidir b'tachtainim. God wanted to have a home in this world. Each and every person is an ambassador of the divine. Every person is a manifestation of the divine light in this world. So somebody says, that's true for an inspired life. That's true for a person who's spiritually sensitive. But you have to know my life is different. I'm an earthy type of person. I'm not spiritual. I'm not even that religious. I have a lot of doubts. I'm confused. I had a difficult childhood. I deal with difficulties in my marriage. I deal with difficulties in my upbringing and so forth. And that's why the Megillah doesn't even have God's name mentioned once. If the Megillah would have Hashem's name mentioned once, it would ruin the plot. Because the Megillah is trying to tell a different story, not like the stories of the rest of the Tanakh. The Megillah is trying to tell that one story that somebody looks at parts of their life and they could see no purpose in it. They don't see God's name at all. I don't see meaning. What does it mean there's no God's name? There's no purpose. It's random. It's meshuggah. There's problems that people deal with. You don't see a purpose. It's just headaches and headaches and headaches and more headaches. There's tragedies that people deal with and crises and emotional stuff and upheavals or stuff that happened to you in your youth. And you look back and you say, where was God? And the answer is, I can't tell you. His name is not present in the Megillah. People often ask, where was God when this happened to me as a 4-year-old, as a 10-year-old, as a 20-year-old? When this happened with my mother, with my father, with my brother, with my school, with me, with this person, with that person. Where was Hashem? You go to the rest of the Tanakh, God is there. You need the Megillah. God was not in your life, and God is not in the Megillah's life either. And here you'll see a fascinating thing. There's 2 days in the Jewish calendar, Purim and Yom Kippur. They have similar names. Purim will either be on Sunday or Tuesday or Friday. Yom Kippur will never be on Sunday, will never ever be on Tuesday, and will never be on Friday. The days that Purim comes out, Yom Kippur will never come out. The days Yom Kippur comes out to, Purim will never come out. Purim this year is Tuesday, next week. Purim can also be Sunday. Purim can also be Friday, Erev Shabbos. You'll never have Purim on a Monday. You'll never have Purim on a Wednesday. This is a guarantee. If you find Purim on Wednesday, you get your money back. You'll never have Purim on Shabbos, ever. Never Monday, never Wednesday, never Shabbos. Purim you'll have on a Sunday. Purim you'll have on a Tuesday. Purim you'll have on a Friday. You have Purim Erev Shabbos, it goes straight into Shabbos. Not often, but you have it. Yom Kippur is the exact opposite. You'll never have Yom Kippur on a Sunday. You'll never have Mitzvah Shabbos Yom Kippur. You'll have Yom Kippur on Monday. You'll never have Yom Kippur on Tuesday, guaranteed. You'll have it on Wednesday. You'll never ever have Yom Kippur on Friday. Mitzvah Yom Kippur is never a Friday night meal, right? You never remember coming home from Yom Kippur from Ne'ilah and making Kiddush. Doesn't work. You'll have Yom Kippur on Shabbos. Shabbos, yeah, Yom Kippur comes out on Shabbos. We don't say Avinu Malkeinu, so davening finishes 5 minutes earlier. So you remember it. But Shabbos will never be Purim. So again, Purim you'll have Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. We'll soon discuss Thursday. Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. Yom Kippur will be the other 3 days. Monday, Wednesday, Shabbos. Never Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. Is this just a coincidence? Not a coincidence at all. It has to do with what was created on those days. You remember I said that Sunday, God created things that could become tameh. Monday not. Tuesday, yeah. Wednesday not. Friday, yeah. Shabbos not. That's the difference of Yom Kippur and Purim. Yom Kippur is a day of transcendence. I don't eat, I don't drink, there's no intimacy, you don't bathe, you don't anoint yourself with oils, etc. We don't wear shoes. It's a day of transcendence. Purim is a very different day. And yet Yom Kippur is called Kippurim, as though Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. It's funny. Yom Kippur is a day of atonement, of tshuva, introspection, al chet, ashamnu, you apologize, you feel like a new person. Purim is an opposite energy. Yom Kippur can only be on Monday, Wednesday, Shabbos, because Yom Kippur can only be on days when you're higher than impurity. What's the chiddush of Purim? The chiddush of Purim, the greatness of Purim is, it's deeper than Yom Kippur. That's why Yom HaKippurim is Kippurim, it's like Purim. Purim is Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, the days when there is impurity. Just like the Megillah is a document where you don't see God's name. In other words, at the surface, what's Purim? Purim is you look at a life and you see that my life apparently does not have God's name present in it. There's no, what's the expression? You see the writing on the wall. You know where that expression comes from? The writing on the wall comes from Daniel chapter 5. Vashti had a father, her name was Belshazzar. He was the third of the Babylonian emperors, and he made a party to celebrate his kingdom. And he took out the kalim of the Beis HaMikdash, the vessels of the holy sanctuary, to celebrate. In the middle of the party, he saw the writing on the wall that the Babylonian Empire has reached its limit, and that night, Vashti's father was killed. And that's when the Persian empire began, and Achashverosh took out the vessels at his party. You could read the writing on the wall, but sometimes you don't see any writing on the wall. I was once giving a lecture here on Shabbos, and there were signs over the city. So the sign said that the title of the lecture was, "Why is life a roller coaster?" I met somebody Shabbos, and he says, "Good Shabbos, how are you?" And then he tells me, "By the way, I'm not coming to your lecture today." I said, "Okay, thank you for the boost of self-confidence. But why did you have to tell me? You don't have to come. Why do you have to tell me I'm not coming?" He says, "I wanted to tell you that your title is completely irrelevant to me." I said, "Okay, frankly, I'm happy to hear. It's why is life a roller coaster? I'm glad it's irrelevant." He says, "I'll tell you why. My life is not a roller coaster. My life is straight down all the time. I have no reason to come. It's not a roller coaster, just go straight down all the time." Person says there's no writing on the wall. In their life, they constantly see things they don't see. Sometimes you could see a life, there's meaning, there's purpose. I understand there's even a challenge and a struggle. Person comes as this happened, this occurs, that occurred. I don't see God's name mentioned here at all. Hashem is completely invisible. That's called a state of tumah. What's tumah? Tumah is a state of disalignment with yourself, with your core, with your God. And that's the chiddush of Purim. And that's why the dreidel is so different than the grager. The dreidel, the point, points upwards. The grager, the point is downward. It's very different. On Chanukah, the minority was victorious over the majority. In other words, there was a visible miracle. If you looked at Purim and you reported the story, God was completely concealed. It happens to be that the king had a first lady, and she was Jewish, and she got him drunk, and she had him execute his prime minister, just like he executed his first queen. It's good diplomacy, good politics, and good mazel. Where's Hashem? You don't see Hashem at all in the story. And yet, the truth is, it was all Hashem. Invisible, dressed up in the earth. Hence, we don't say Hallel on Purim. Hallel you say for revealed miracles. The chiddush of Purim is much deeper. The chiddush of Purim is that in your life which seems concealed. God is concealed is also a miracle. The idea of Purim is the awareness that there's no such a thing that there's a moment in your life in which you're detached. There's never a moment in your life in which you're alone. There's never a moment in your life in which you're abandoned. There's never a moment in your life in which you're not in a relationship. There's never a moment in your life where you're just left out, hanging, where you're just thrown under the bus. You're just left hanging. There's no such a thing. There's a moment in my life where God is not with me completely holding my hand. What does Amalek say? Amalek says, Ram, the Gematria 240. What's Ram? Ram means, of course, God is big, but he's too big for you. He's up there. Ram means he's up there. In Parshas B'Shalach, when the Jews leave Egypt, they tell Moshe, we're not sure, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. Is God inside of us or not? The next stage is Amalek's war. How could the Jews say, not sure? They just left Egypt. The pshat is, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu. The word kirbeinu, you know what kerev, kravaya means in Hebrew? Intestines, kishkas. Is God in my kishkas? Most people don't have a problem that God exists. If you look at the world, there has to be a creator. I mean, just study, I told you, one drop of water, one followed by 21 zeros, is pretty impressive. Forget about DNA, forget about the rest of the planet. Just a drop of water, you'll find God. But I have another question. Is Hashem in my kishkas, in my intestines, in my abdomen, in my stomach? You're going to tell me that if I ate fleischiks on Shabbos afternoon, and I don't wait the right amount of hours to eat ice cream at Tzoi Shabbos, both are mitzvahs. You have to eat shol on Shabbos afternoon, but you have to eat ice cream at Tzoi Shabbos. So if I don't wait, those who follow the minig, I know those who wait 3 hours, but let's follow the 6 hours, the majority of the communities. So you're going to tell me I waited 5 hours and 59 minutes, and I'm starving. The pizza arrived from Shelley's, and it's sizzling. And I look at the clock, and there's 1 minute left. I already waited a half an hour. The pizza is cold. Rahman al-Islam, I have to put it into the toaster oven. Or the milkshake is already getting decomposed. And you're going to tell me that this God cares why Jacobson or Pliny Almighty waited 5 hours and 59 minutes, or waited 6 hours, and you take it seriously. It's insulting to Hashem. Amalek says it's insulting to God. Ram, he's too big for this. What do you think? He's as petty as you? You're a petty person. You think he's like your boss? You came a minute late, I'm taking off your paycheck. Your boss is like that because he's a petty person. You think God is so petty? Ram, he's too big, he's infinite. How can infinity be concerned with a minute? Doesn't make sense. And Bechlal, you think he cares about your kishkas, your kravaim? You're one little person. You're smaller than a speck of dust, even relative to the entire planet. Take a trip to outer space and look what our planet looks like. It's a speck of dust. And in the speck of dust, I'm a speck of 1/7 billion specks. And that's humans. Relative to the animals and the ecology and geology, I'm not even a speck of dust. And it's true. Take a picture from outer space. Look what we look like. We take ourselves seriously. But look what Ram, Amalek says, God is big. He's uplifted. He's aloof. He's sublime. He's infinite. And that's why everything is a goyrel. It's just random. Everything is random. To say that God is concerned with my abdomen, with what I eat, with what I don't eat, with my headache, with my kishkas, with my relationships, with what the call I got this morning from the doctor, with the email I'm dealing with the insurance company, with the principal, with the seminary. Really? What are you, a narcissist? It's called narcissistic personality disorder. You need help. These are all good questions. They're very logical questions. It makes sense. Why would God be concerned with these 5 hours and 59 minutes? And if it's Shabbos and I have a key and I walk out with the key, you just ruined my world. Or I watered my plant on Shabbos. Or I put on a fire, I put on a light. How insulting, Amalek says, how insulting can you be? Or what happens in somebody's bedroom? Or if somebody counted 6 days or 7 days. They went to a mikveh before it was dark. And then if there's a little hair stuck in my nail, oh my God! These are all good questions. And that's why even when Mashiach comes, the Megillas Esther will still not be bottled. Because that's essentially the unique story of Megillas Esther. Because the truth is, relative to infinity, even big things don't matter. The whole planet could cease to exist and nothing matters. Relative to infinity, even who will be the next president of the United States is not really a topic, I'm sorry to say. I don't know if Mars is busy with Sanders, Bloomberg, Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump, Adam Schiff, and Mr. Nadler, and Congressman Omar. In Mars, they have their own stardust, and that's only in Mars. You talk about infinity, I'm telling you, our whole planet is a speck of dust. It's like a little grain of sand and less. So what makes something significant? What really makes something significant in life? So nothing is really significant. Everything is a mockery, everything is a joke. What makes it significant is that infinity chose it and wants to have a relationship with it. And if that's the case, then nothing is too small. Because even the biggest thing is really infinitely insignificant. What makes something significant is that Hashem is interested in it. And for him, what I call the smallest thing and I call the biggest thing is equal. And the smallest thing can have equal significance. It's like one atom, the power of an atom. So the Megillah teaches that a whole empire revolves. And it all leads to one story. And what's that one story? That one story is La Yehudim Ha'Yisa'ir V'Simcha V'Sasim V'Kar. You live a whole life, and there's a lot going on, and you don't see Hashem's name in it. And people are being pulled and schlepped, and every day you have hundreds of things to deal with. And what's the Megillah telling you? The Megillah tells you, don't start later in the story. Start Vayehi B'mei Achashverosh. Because you have to know one thing. There's no such a thing that there's a moment that's divorced of absolute divine meaning. That there's a moment in which you're disconnected from God in the deepest way. That there is an aspect of life that's too weird or too small or too ugly or too insignificant for him to look at. That there's one experience or one encounter in which somehow I have been forgotten. That does not exist. And it's not because of narcissism. On the contrary, it's the humility of a person understanding what is at stake in their own life, in their own behavior. It sounds humble to say, who am I, what am I? But that's not humility. That's a person not realizing what's at stake in their life. So the world is a wedding. So much going on, but don't lose focus. What does it mean, don't lose focus? Remember that in every single experience, even if God is completely hidden, there is your unique opportunity to connect, your unique opportunity for a relationship, your unique opportunity to create. Sometimes I could see it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it feels like I'm in a place of tumma, which means disconnection, the days of Purim, not like the days of Yom Kippur. But that's the chiddush of Purim, not that God is present when he's visible. Even when there's no visibility. It's a party of Achashverosh. What does it have to do with Hashem? It's not a party of Achashverosh. It's a party of Achashverosh on the surface. On a deeper level, it's God inviting you for intimacy. Harei at mikudeshesli. On a deeper level, it's part of my mission to bring godliness into this world through this particular venue. Why does it have to be this way? Why am I now dealing with this? I don't know. We don't know. I don't know how it all connects and why it has to be connected this way. But now you look at the days when Yom Kippur is, when Purim is, you see the difference. There's only one day that Yom Kippur and Purim could be together, and that's Thursday. Sunday is Purim, Monday is Yom Kippur, Tuesday Purim, Wednesday Yom Kippur, Friday Purim, Shabbos Yom Kippur. And they never can be interchangeable. The only day you can have Purim and Yom Kippur on is Thursday. And the reason for this, and this is very interesting, I'm going to say it briefly, just don't shut down on me with ADD now because you have to concentrate for a moment. And that is because Thursday is a day for Yom Kippur because nothing was created on Thursday that could become tameh. What was created on Thursday? Mammals, living animals, and birds, and they can't become tameh. A person could, that's Friday. Wood could, that's Tuesday. Earth could, that's Sunday. But Monday, heaven. Wednesday, the planets. Thursday, the birds and the mammals, they can't become tameh. Shabbos, there's no creation, doesn't become tameh. So Purim and Yom Kippur could be Thursday. But if Purim is on a day that could become tameh, why is it Thursday? The answer is There's something called what's that very big bird that lays eggs that are very powerful? Ostrich. Huh? Ostrich. You ever saw an ostrich's eggs? Huh? An ostrich's eggs are very, very powerful. They're huge and they're powerful. It's not like an egg you get from your chicken. You give a little kvetch and boom, there's a mikveh in your kitchen. An ostrich's egg is very, very strong and very powerful. Extremely strong and powerful. And because of that, people used ostrich's eggs as vessels. You could store things in it. The eggshell of your chicken you're not going to use as a vessel because it's going to crack. You put in a pin, 2 ice, it's cracked already. But an ostrich's egg is a wonderful piece of furniture. So I know not many of you use it as a piece of furniture, but you could, you do. An ostrich's egg. You used to. Previous Gilgal. Where did you get it? South Africa. Okay, you see that. So they use it as a keli. So the Chachamim said that people will confuse it with a regular vessel made of metal or made of wood or made of clay because it's powerful. And therefore, the Chachamim imposed tumah on it. Because really, the egg of a bird cannot become tumah. It's just not susceptible to tumah. But metal is susceptible to tumah, like gold, silver, copper, tin, lead, wood, earthenware. Because it was used as the other ones and it could look like it, especially people would dye it and paint it. So because of the confusion, they didn't want to say this vessel is pure, because then people will purify other vessels. So because of people's error, the Chachamim made that the vessel, the egg of an ostrich should become tameh. But biblically, it's not. So Yom Kippur could be on Thursday, because there's nothing on Thursday that could become tameh. But Purim is a rabbinic holiday, not a biblical holiday. And rabbinically, there's things that could become tameh on Thursday. So therefore, Thursday is the only day that Yom Kippur and Purim could share. Because biblically, nothing could be tameh on Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur, nothing could be tameh on Thursday. So Yom Kippur could be on Thursday. Rabbinically, there are things that could become tameh on Thursday. Rabbinically. So Purim, which is a rabbinic holiday, could be on Thursday. Yes. But the equation, yes, she's right. But the equation is, Yom Kippur always falls out on days of Tumah. And Purim always falls out on days of Tumah. And Yom Kippur never ever falls out on days of Tumah. Even Thursday, biblically, nothing could become Tameh. And Yom Kippur is a biblical holiday. Why could Purim be Thursday? Only one reason. Because Purim is a rabbinic holiday. And rabbinically, even Thursday can create Tumah in the ostrich's eggs. So therefore, they could both be on Thursday. Because what's Purim? Purim is that even when I find myself in a reality and it seems like I'm impure, and it seems like I'm alienated, and it seems like I'm lonely, the full intensity of the Purim holiday is there. And that's why Purim is the only holiday that has a Persian name. Why not give it a Hebrew name? Give it a Jewish name. No. The Megillah even says, Purim, al Shem Apur, hu agoyrel. Call it goyrel. No, calls it a Persian name. And that's where the Gemara says, B'shenichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. What's Adar? Adar is two words. Aleph, Dar. Aleph is oneness. What's Dar? Dar is dira, to dwell, to live. What's the key for simcha in life? B'shenichnas Adar. If you can bring in Aleph, Dar into your life, if you can realize that the Aleph is Dar, is living with you. When I'm sleeping, and when I'm drinking, and when I'm eating, and when I'm exercising, and when I'm feeling lousy, and when I wake up on my left side, when I wake up on my right side, when the day is going exactly the way I want it to go, when there's a curveball, if I could realize that Aleph Dar, if I could bring in Mishanichnas, Aleph Dar, then Marbim Besimcha, then your joy becomes increased. Because the reason we have so much anxiety and stress is because of the voices that tell me my life is not working out the way it's supposed to be. Think about why you're anxious today. the expectations. I'm not going to be on time. I lost my chance. They're not going to return my call. This is ridiculous. This is not going to work out. What is it all coming from? It's coming from the fact that because I don't see Hashem's name in my Megillah, therefore I feel that I'm alone, I'm abandoned, I'm isolated. It's too much to deal with. People say, I have too much to deal with. One curveball, another curveball, a third curveball. I'm a good catcher, but Havifel is Ashir. And this pitcher is a brilliant pitcher. That's all because I'm taking upon myself too much. I'm carrying the whole burden of life. Comes Purim and says, you don't have to carry a burden. Mishanichnas Aleph Dar. Bring in Aleph and Dar into you. Bring Aleph that it should Dar. It should live with you. The moment the Aleph could live with you, then what happens? Then Marbim B'Simcha. It doesn't mean I don't have responsibilities. It doesn't mean I don't have 100 things to deal with. It doesn't mean that right after this class I have to go confront this situation and confront that situation. What it means is that I am an ambassador of God. I don't run the world. I'm an ambassador. God's light wants to come into the world. And He chooses me, He chooses you for a particular light to come into the world. How do you do it? Always, whatever you're doing. Sometimes I have to take the car to a mechanic. Sometimes I'm waiting on a line. Sometimes I'm shopping. Sometimes I got to deal with a situation that's very confusing and dumbfounding. The question is the issue is never take it personal. Never make it a personal thing and therefore I'm guilty, I failed, I was successful, I'm a culprit, I'm bad, I'm lousy. Those are all voices that take you away from the real story. They take you away from the wedding. So what's the exercise from today's class? Imagine all of life is an ongoing wedding, okay? A wedding has a lot of rooms, and there's a lot of people calling you. Hey, you came to the wedding, it's so nice to see you. I have to talk to you, right? You know that one? It's Hashgacha Pratis that you came to the wedding. I didn't think you're coming. I have to talk to you just for 45 minutes. 45 minutes. A moment later, you finished. Baruch Hashem, you finished. Oh, you're so good. Yeah, I have to tell you something. I have to show you. And then you come home and you're like more stressed out. You're taking salt baths for 3 weeks and trying to extricate all the energy of all the people. The problem is, I was not a channel. It was not Mishanichnas Adar. I surrendered to Achashverosh's story instead of Esther's story. And one can't do that. Somebody met me the other day, I was in the bank. Somebody says, oh, it's Hashgacha Pratis that I met you. I have to talk to you. It's just going to be 10 minutes. The problem is I had a shiur to go. I had a shiur to go to. I said, I'm so sorry, but I really have a shiur to go to. People are waiting. I can't. But you can email me, and I'll be there. I'll answer you. So he says, but don't you believe it's Hashgacha Pratis that I met you? I said, it's absolute Hashgacha Pratis that I met you. And in fact, it's also Hashgacha Pratis that I'm going to be leaving right now. That's also Hashgacha Pratis. Remember, Hashgacha Pratis works both ways. That's also going to be Hashgacha Pratis, right? Hashgacha Pratis doesn't mean when I could manipulate it a certain way. It's all Hashgacha Pratis. So imagine life is literally a wedding. And the wedding is full of action. And you can get distracted by everything in the world, from the makeup room to the smorgasbord, from the bar to the caterer behind the scenes. And they're all important. But remember where you're at. The focus is, the core is, Hareat Mekudeshes Li. This moment, the Chassan and the Kala can become one. La Yehudim Hoysa Oira, V'Simcha, V'Sasan Vikar, Kainti Yalano, have a wonderful day on Afreilich and Purim. I do want to announce that Purim at night, after the Suda at 10 o'clock, we have a Fabring and a Kumsitz in Vilchovitz on Maple Avenue, the Vishnitz Hall, for men and for women, with a mechitza. Everybody is invited. It will also be live streamed on the yeshiva.net. That's next Tuesday night. You can tell your husbands or children, And everybody have a wonderful Adar and a very happy and healthy and exciting Purim. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Welcome back. Yeah.
I just want to pull it a little bit more. I mean, the whole thing was fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh, how the way you... Wow, that was a tapestry.
Thank you.
That's you say tuna is this aligned with yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to use this when I'm teaching.
Yeah.
So I can see, I always tell them that tuna, when you tahar and you tana, when I'm teaching a challah, so I teach them when you tahar.
Remember, in 2 weeks, next week there's no shir, it's Purim. The week after we're back here, okay? Here, 9:30, yeah.
So then I tell them, when you tahar, so that's Kedusha, that's when you're connecting, with your spouse, that's when you're connecting with Hashem. But it's very interesting to see how you just said this, because it's true, when a person is tameh, they're prohibited. So they're not, besides being disaligned with yourself, you're not in that place of Kedusha, being close to Hashem, I'm talking about Taras Mishpacha, like pulling it in, no?
So I wouldn't say that when a woman is tamei, she's not close with Hashem. I would just say it's just a different avodah then. It's a different type of closeness. That's like in Purim and on holidays. Finding Hashem in that space. That's the whole idea why Purim is on the days of Tumah. In other words, you're finding Hashem in that place. I wouldn't say you're not connected. It's a different type of connection.